Who's an extreme extrovert, and which kind of turned, he's an older brother, so it made me into an introvert. And I was always very lively and, among my friends, but outside of that, I'd go to a dance and sit in the corner.
Who was the real James Garner? Behind the charming smile of Maverick in the Rockford Files lay a man shrouded in mystery. Born in hardship, he rose to Hollywood stardom, captivating audiences as the quintessential American hero. Yet, Garner fiercely guarded his private life, building an impenetrable fortress around his secrets. Whispers of hidden connections with icons like Cary Grant and Rock Hudson fuel speculation. What truths did he conceal? Unverified letters, private gatherings, and a defiant stand against Hollywood's machine hint at a life far deeper than his on-screen roles. Unravel the enigma of James Garner's untold story. The note was just the beginning. To understand the depth of the secrets James Garner might have kept, one must first look at the man behind the Maverick image. A man who meticulously built walls around his private world. He entered the world as James Scott Bumgar on the 7th of April, 1928, in the small town of Norman, Oklahoma. His early life was etched with hardship, a working-class family, the profound loss of his mother at a young age, and a father who remarried a woman Garner would later recall in his memoir with a stark descriptor, unkind to her stepchildren. Such a turbulent childhood didn't break him. Instead, it forged an early self-reliance, a steely core of independence that would define him. Before Hollywood beckoned, Garner's hands were calloused from various manual jobs. He installed carpets, worked as a parking lot attendant, and served his country during the Korean War. After his discharge, the westward pull led him to Los Angeles. There, a brief foray into male fashion modeling provided an unlikely bridge to his true calling. By 1954, he was in New York, honing his craft at the prestigious HB Studio, a training ground for many notable American method actors. His ascent was swift. The role of Brett Maverick in the hit television series Maverick ignited his career as the charming, quick-witted card player with sharp observational skills and a distinct Western masculine charm. Garner became a household name. This iconic character helped solidify his image as the quintessential, typical American man in the public consciousness. Yet, beneath the easygoing exterior of Maverick, the reserved and fiercely independent personality, born from those early struggles, continued to govern James Scott Bumgar.
Look, see how we compared, and we were laughing and joking and whatever. And they hired Kelly and to play Bart Maverick. Oh yeah, we had great fun. Yeah, Jack and I got along well.
He became an enigma in an industry that thrived on exposure. Garner rarely appeared at glittering entertainment events and conspicuously shunned personal publicity, a stark contrast to many of his contemporaries who courted the limelight. Journalists who interacted with him often described him as an absolute professional, yet they also noted he was very limited in sharing. He actively built a moat around his personal life, distancing himself from the intrusive lens of the tabloids and steadfastly refusing to disclose anything he deemed unnecessary for making films. This intense, almost obsessive dedication to Hollywood privacy soon became a constant subject of speculation in itself. What, precisely, was James Garner so determined to protect, even as his star soared to phenomenal heights?
I realized he knew everything. He knew everything about the equipment, the cameras, right? So I naively asked him, why don't you direct? Because in the theater and movies, the director is, the director is important. You can cast and so on and so on.
Garner's carefully guarded privacy was legendary, but posthumous revelations hinted that these walls concealed more than just a desire for a quiet life. Whispers from dusty archives began to link him to some of Hollywood's most iconic and rumored to be gay leading men. Starting with the debonair Cary Grant, Garner's carefully guarded privacy was legendary, but posthumous revelations hinted that these walls concealed more than just a desire for a quiet life. Whispers from dusty archives began to link him to some of Hollywood's most iconic and rumored to be gay. Leading men, starting with the debonair Cary Grant. After 2014, as historians and archivists delved deeper, a fragmented picture started to emerge from once sealed documents, handwritten letters, intimate personal notes, and, crucially, guest lists from private parties. These archival materials began to sketch the outlines of Garner's close relationships with several prominent male actors, men whose own private lives had long been subjects of hushed speculation. One particularly intriguing piece of this puzzle was an unpublished note, believed to have been penned by a Warner Brothers production assistant. This note described James Garner not as the reclusive figure many knew, but as a frequent guest at clandestine gatherings in the opulent homes of Beverly Hills and within the discreet walls of the Chateau Marmont Hotel. These were not ordinary Hollywood soirees. They were known havens for members of the entertainment industry's queer community, sanctuaries where they could gather away from the prying eyes of the public and the press. There were no cameras, no reporters-only insiders. It was in such sheltered environments, as one film researcher at UCLA noted, that many special relationships began, born out of a shared need for spaces where they could simply be themselves. The name that surfaced with notable frequency in connection with Garner was Cary Grant. Their paths reportedly crossed at exclusive, private MGM parties held in Beverly Hills during the late 1950s. This was a period when Garner was at the zenith of his maverick fame, and Grant, ever the silver screen idol, had recently completed an affair to remember. Internal studio notes indicated their presence at no fewer than 5 of these highly selective events, designated specifically for talent under contract and a few chosen guests. Publicly, the two stars never collaborated on any film project, and there was no formal professional relationship to speak of. However, their repeated presence at these private functions, coupled with a rare display of closeness during certain industry occasions, such as Garner's unexpected appearance at the premiere of Grant's film, North by Northwest Fueled, considerable speculation among researchers.
Of course, Cary Grant I was a tremendous fan of, and he was another one of those guys that was a very distinctive personality on the screen, probably never got as much credit as he deserved, but he was one of the kings of doing that sort of thing, that romantic comedy.
Adding another layer to this enigma was a comment Garner himself made in a 1983 interview. He expressed his admiration for how Grant never let Hollywood define who he was. At the time, it was perceived as a generic, respectful compliment from one star to another, but viewed through the lens of the information that surfaced after 2014, this remark has been reinterpreted by some as a subtle hint, perhaps at a deeper, more personal bond. The timing of certain events also raises eyebrows. In 1958, when the notorious Confidential magazine ran a piece hinting at Grant being gay, it coincided with a nearly 5-month period during which James Garner abruptly withdrew from all public social events. This curious detail was once noted in passing by the scandalous chronicle Hollywood Babylon, but was never thoroughly examined. Was this merely a coincidence? A quirk of scheduling? Or did it signify something far more profound about the connection between these two intensely private men? If the connection with Grant was woven through social circles and subtle admiration, Garner's reported link to Rock Hudson appeared to have more tangible, almost urgent, underpinnings, forged during a period of intense pressure for both men. If the connection with Cary Grant was woven through social circles and subtle admiration, James Garner's reported link to Rock Hudson appeared to have more tangible, almost urgent, underpinnings, forged during a period of intense pressure for both men. Indeed, unlike the delicate threads connecting him to Grant, the evidence hinting at Garner's bond with Rock Hudson feels more direct, painting a picture of camaraderie formed in the crucible of Hollywood's often unseen pressures. The story picks up significant momentum after Garner's acrimonious contract dispute with Warner Brothers. In 1960, he didn't immediately align himself with another major studio. Instead, he began to be seen at events organized by Universal Studios, a powerhouse where Rock Hudson was then one of the reigning kings, his star burning bright with films like Pillow Talk. It's in this period that a rare photograph, dated 1961, surfaces, a candid shot capturing Garner and Hudson together on the Universal backlot. They are deep in conversation, away from the main bustle. An off-hours moment backstage that speaks volumes more than any publicity still. Further fueling these narratives are materials from a Universal screenwriter of that era. These accounts describe Garner engaging in private meetings with Hudson at Hudson's secluded Hollywood Hills residence. These weren't casual drop-ins. They were reportedly regular occurrences, typically on Saturday evenings, and pointedly, without any assistants present. The timing of these clandestine get-togethers is particularly striking. They coincided with a period when Hudson himself was navigating immense personal turmoil, having just completed therapy following an invasive FBI investigation into his sexual orientation. Was this a hidden romance? Some scholars propose a different, though equally profound, dynamic. They suggest the relationship was more supportive than overtly romantic. Hudson, long accustomed to the crushing weight of living a double life and the intricate dance of maintaining a public persona, may have been a crucial guide for Garner. Perhaps Hudson, with his hard-won experience, was helping Garner navigate the treacherous currents of media scrutiny, especially as Garner was preparing to make a significant return to film in leading action roles. This theory gained further traction when, just 2 years later, Garner signed on to star in the high-octane racing film Grand Prix, a picture that would become a fresh milestone in his post-Maverick career. A tantalizing, almost bombshell, claim emerged from a source on the post-production team. It was allegedly Rock Hudson who introduced Garner to a real European race car coach, an invaluable connection for preparing for such a demanding role. While this crucial detail has never been publicly confirmed, its whisper persists. Mentioned in an unsigned personal note discovered within the film research archives of the University of Southern California. So, who was Rock Hudson to James Garner? A friend in a time of need, a professional ally, or perhaps a mentor in the art of surviving Hollywood's perilous landscape of secrecy? Grant was a social link. Hudson, perhaps a professional bridge. But with Marlon Brando, James Garner's connection resonated on a different frequency altogether, a shared philosophy of resistance against the very system that had made them stars. Grant was a social link. Hudson, perhaps a professional bridge. But with Marlon Brando, James Garner's connection resonated on a different frequency altogether, a shared philosophy of resistance against the very system that had made them stars. This wasn't about a whispered rendezvous in shadowy corners. It was seemingly a meeting of minds, a kinship forged in a mutual understanding of Hollywood's gilded cage. Their paths had crossed earlier. Brando, the brooding icon of method acting, had taught at the famed Actors Studio in New York, where Garner himself had studied. However, their more substantial interactions reportedly blossomed later, in the crucible of the mid-1970s. This was a turbulent period for Garner. He was the star of the hugely successful television series The Rockford Files, a role that further cemented his everyman appeal. Yet, behind the scenes, between 1974 and 1975, he found himself locked in a fierce battle with Universal Studios, the powerful entity producing his show, over creative control, scheduling demands, and script integrity. The disputes escalated to the point where Garner took the audacious step of filing a lawsuit against Universal for breach of contract and overreach in production control, a bold move for any actor at the time. It's within this charged atmosphere that an unverified, yet utterly compelling letter, believed to have been penned by Marlon Brando to James Garner, is said to have surfaced. The letter's alleged message was one of stark encouragement and shared defiance. You don't need them. We never needed them to live authentically. While its authenticity remains debated, the tone and language reportedly bear a striking resemblance to Brando's known writings and his iconoclastic worldview. Analysts looking at this purported correspondence tend to see it not as evidence of a romantic entanglement, but as a profound testament to a shared philosophy, a mutual disdain for the often dehumanizing machinery of the entertainment industry, and a common desire for authenticity. Further hints of this intellectual alliance appeared on the set of The Rockford Files. During the 1,975 tapings, production journals noted multiple instances of Garner quoting advice on how to protect one's image without pandering to media approval. The source of this sage counsel? A friend better left unnamed. Garner would cryptically state, "One cannot help but recall that Marlon Brando was one of the very few actors from that older generation who openly brainy-achin, if sometimes elliptically, acknowledged having relationships with both men and women." His famous declaration to Time magazine in 1976, "Sex is not something that needs to be declared," stood in stark contrast to the prevailing norms. James Garner never made any such public statements. Yet, his sustained connection with the rebellious Brando throughout the challenging year of 1975 inevitably led many to wonder, was Garner's courageous legal stand against a monolithic studio a fully independent move? Or was it perhaps bolstered, even quietly guided, by an influential, like-minded ally who intimately understood the steep price of living authentically in an inauthentic world?
The Rockford Files was a direct relation to Maverick in the sense that there were all these detective shows on the air at that time, just as there were lots of Westerns in the late 50s, early 60s, so this guy had to put a different spin on it.
I have a knack for killing a genre, yes. There was the cowboy in the 50s.
These rumored alliances with Grant, Hudson, and Brando formed a shadowy backdrop to Garner's public career. But his defiance wasn't limited to private friendships. It exploded into open warfare with the studios and a strategic dance with the press. These rumored alliances with Cary Grant, Rock Hudson, and Marlon Brando formed a shadowy, intriguing backdrop to James Garner's public career. But his defiance wasn't limited to these private friendships and philosophical alignments. It often exploded into open warfare with the powerful Hollywood studios and manifested as a meticulously strategic dance with the press. Garner was drawing his own battle lines, and he was not afraid to defend them. One of the earliest and most telling skirmishes came to light through Warner Brothers. Internal documents. In 1960, amidst already simmering contract disputes with the studio, Garner delivered a bombshell. He flatly refused to sign a morality clause. These clauses were standard industry practice, insidious contractual demands that required artists to maintain a public image and private life that aligned with the often puritanical, studio-defined moral standards of the era. They were tools of control, plain and simple. Most actors, fearing for their careers, complied without a murmur. Garner's refusal, therefore, was not just unusual, it was an act of open rebellion. Immediately, whispers slithered through industry back channels. He must be protecting something he could not publicly disclose. What secret could be so significant that he'd risk his standing with a major studio? This act of defiance was not an isolated incident. The same year, March 1960, the notorious Confidential magazine, a publication feared for its salacious exposés, published an anonymous article provocatively titled, "The Western Man Whose Private Life is Stranger Than." The piece, filled with suggestive innuendo, described a famous television actor hailing from Oklahoma. Then starring in a hit Western, Garner was the star of Maverick, who was frequently absent from public events for unexplained reasons, yet was known to appear at private, unrecorded gatherings within the artistic community. Though no name was explicitly mentioned, the description pointed an unmistakable finger directly at James Garner, who had just signed a new contract with Warner Brothers. Garner's response was not one of quiet retreat. It was swift, decisive, and brutal. He dispatched a legal notice demanding the article be immediately withdrawn, coupled with an unequivocal warning. He would sue for defamation if any further insinuations were made. Confidential magazine, a publication that had made careers tremble, quickly pulled the piece from its next issue and made no further references to the matter. The industry paper Variety later confirmed the incident but offered no detailed commentary. This was a significant victory. It was one of the rare instances where Garner directly confronted the media attack dogs, and one of the very few times Confidential was forced to back down by a celebrity. From that point forward, Garner established an unspoken but clearly understood rule with the press. He would control his own narrative. His appearances would be limited to mainstream, reputable publications like Television Guide or Time magazine, and then only for in-depth feature columns, not salacious gossip. This strategy of meticulous media control kept his public image remarkably intact for decades. Even Zoll, industry insiders, the set assistants, lighting technicians, and former editors who observed him daily painted a picture of a man who, while kind, always kept his distance. They described Garner as someone who typically left the set alone, consistently avoided cast celebrations, and frequently canceled studio-organized events if he sensed too much media presence. Notably, several longtime technicians at Universal Studios recalled that while Garner regularly showed up at intimate gatherings, attended only by a select group of close male actors, including figures like Rock Hudson and Anthony Perkins, he was conspicuously never seen accompanying any female artists to similar private occasions. He was, in essence, meticulously building an invisible, impenetrable fortress around his true self. For decades, Garner's fortress of privacy held strong, but after his passing in July 2014, the silence began to crack, and the questions he'd so carefully deflected throughout his life resurfaced with a vengeance, now fueled by a new generation of curious onlookers, and the digital age, unanswered questions, and a family's quiet dignity. For decades, James Garner's fortress of privacy held strong, a testament to his unwavering resolve. But after his passing in July 2014, the silence he had so masterfully orchestrated began to crack. The questions he'd so carefully deflected throughout his remarkable life resurfaced with a vengeance, now fueled by a new generation of curious onlookers and the connective power of the digital age. Public interest suddenly exploded beyond simply honoring his distinguished film career. A deeper, more personal inquiry began. Online forums, particularly platforms like Reddit, became hives of activity. Classic fan communities and new investigators alike began sharing archived news clippings, long-forgotten photographs, and meticulously dissecting every available interview and biographical detail. The central, nagging question echoed through these digital corridors. Did James Garner live a different life? A life that the repressive mores of old Hollywood and his own guarded nature never allowed to become public? The posthumous speculation intensified in March 2015 when an anonymous user on a site identified as Forum X posted a scanned image of a journal page. This page, claimed to be from Garner's own private writings, included a poignant and enigmatic line: "There are people I can't name, but the memory of them never leaves me." Though the document was never authenticated, the image spread like wildfire across the internet, reshared by numerous pop culture commentators and further stoking the flames of curiosity. Around the same time, The Hollywood Reporter published an article that expanded on this burgeoning topic, directly asking, did Hollywood force a generation of artists to live in the shadows just to protect a commercial image? Scholars of popular culture weighed in, citing the painful, well-documented cases of other stars from Garner's era. Rock Hudson, pressured into a sham marriage to preserve his public persona. Tab Hunter, threatened by his own manager with exposure unless he blindly obeyed studio demands. Or Anthony Perkins, who reportedly spent much of his life in fear, despite being one of the most sought-after actors within that unforgiving system. James Garner was never publicly exposed in such a manner, but that does not mean he wasn't under the same immense, suffocating pressure. One particular detail that drew considerable public attention was the reaction of Garner's own family to the swirling speculation that emerged after 2015 His wife of nearly 6 decades, Lois Clark, steadfastly refused to answer any questions from the media, maintaining a dignified silence. His daughter, Gigi Garner, addressed the issue only once. In a brief post on her personal blog, she wrote, "There are things my father chose to keep to himself. Our family respects that." The carefully worded statement neither denied nor confirmed any of the claims, but its ambiguity only contributed to turning the subject into a long-standing debate among fans and cultural critics. To attempt to understand the choices James Garner made, one must inevitably look to the woman who stood by him for nearly 60 years, Lois Clark. They had met at a party in Los Angeles and, according to the Garner files, married just 17 days later. A whirlwind decision that many at the time considered rushed, even risky. Garner was not yet the established star he would become, and Clark was an outsider to the film industry, a former office worker with a daughter, Kim, from a previous marriage, whom Garner would later adopt. Their life, primarily in the quiet, upscale enclave of Brentwood, California, was a world away from Hollywood's relentless social whirl. Gigi Garner, in a rare interview with The Guardian, stated, "My parents chose a different way of living. They refused to use their marriage as a publicity tool." Lois Clark's deep involvement in Garner's contentious 1,975 lawsuit against Universal Studios, attending meetings with attorneys, assisting in reviewing documents, and analyzing negotiation terms, suggested she possessed an intimate knowledge of his professional and perhaps personal battles. Then, in 2015, another piece of unverified material surfaced, alleged drafts of Lois Clark's personal journal, found in the private collection of a Santa Monica-based archivist. One purported excerpt read, "He didn't hide from me. He just didn't want to be turned into a headline." Did Lois truly know and accept the secrets James Garner chose to keep from the outside world? The family's silence, the unconfirmed notes, the persistent whispers, they all contribute to the complex legacy James Garner left behind. It's a legacy not just of screen roles, but of profound questions about fame, truth, and the right to one's own hidden story. The family's silence, the unconfirmed notes, the persistent whispers, they all contribute to the complex legacy James Garner left behind. It's a legacy not just of memorable screen roles, but of profound questions about fame, truth, and an individual's fundamental right to their own hidden story. Especially within the often predatory glare of Hollywood, James Garner never actively chased fleeting media sensations, nor did he relentlessly pursue those overtly era-defining roles that some actors crave. Yet, the James Garner legacy is undeniably foundational. Particularly in the landscape of American television, he was the kind of leading man who felt instinctively relatable, proving that a character's enduring appeal didn't necessarily depend on dramatic pyrotechnics or idealized, flawless traits, but on whether audiences could genuinely believe in and connect with them. This approach subtly yet significantly shifted the paradigms of television storytelling, paving the way for more grounded, imperfect main characters and allowing writers to explore more nuanced narratives. I was the hottest thing on television and didn't know it, and this is in '81. And then I'd been there in '67, and Maverick was on television then, and it was still on in '81, and they still loved it. I was as big as John Wayne in Thailand. Beyond his on-screen contributions, Garner's impact rippled through the industry itself. His landmark legal victory over Universal Studios in 1975 was more than just a personal triumph. It was a pivotal moment that helped alter the often imbalanced actor-studio power dynamics, establishing a vital legal precedent for future performers seeking to protect their rights and their earnings. In an image-obsessed Hollywood, where careers were often meticulously manufactured and ruthlessly dictated by public perception, Garner stood as a remarkable anomaly. He engaged in no overt brand building, stirred no calculated scandals, and yet, through sheer talent and an unwavering commitment to his own terms, He compelled the industry to regard him as a consummate model of professionalism, steady, fiercely independent, and notably media-averse. He navigated his entire career, walking a tightrope between two distinct worlds: the affable public man, known and loved by millions, and the intensely private man he fiercely kept shielded from that same public. His was a life marked by a consistently successful career and a notably lasting marriage, yet his innermost private life remained a resolutely closed book, an enduring enigma. This central paradox of James Garner forces us to ponder: what truly defines a legend? Is it raw talent, unimpeachable character, or the modern demand for complete.com, unvarnished transparency, and if a secret, especially one concerning the deepest aspects of personal identity, is carried to the very end? Does it constitute a deception, or is it the ultimate, inalienable exercise of the right to remain silent? The story of James Garner and the oppressive old Hollywood shadows he so deftly navigated compels us to confront these uncomfortable, lingering questions. The whispers about the life he may have lived away from the cameras may never be fully confirmed with irrefutable proof. Still, they paint a portrait of a man far more complex, perhaps even more courageous, than his easygoing screen persona ever let on, leaving behind a void filled with intriguing speculation and a potent reminder of the enduring power of a well-kept secret. James Garner's legacy as a Hollywood titan endures, not just through Maverick or his bold stand against studios, but in the tantalizing questions he left unanswered. His guarded life, rumored ties to stars like Hudson and Brando, and a family's dignified silence paint a portrait of a man who mastered privacy in a spotlight-driven world. Was it defiance or a deeper truth? The shadows of old Hollywood hold clues, but the full story remains elusive. Subscribe and follow our channel for more captivating dives into the lives of legends, uncover the secrets they carried, and explore the mysteries that still linger in Tinseltown's glittering past.